want to learn to understand it more, right?
We're live.
What?
We're live.
No, wait a minute. We're having a conversation right now. We can't go live. This is just getting juicy. Okay.
I think I'm gonna have to start saying 1, 2, 3 live.
Well, hey, okay. Happy New Year. You caught us. All right.
Happy New Year. Happy New
Having
Year.
we were having a little sidebar conversation pre, we say that we want to be unscripted, but we kind of had a little bit of a rehearsal of a conversation, did we?
we're just discussing today's topic briefly, literally for less than a minute. So I
Yes.
wouldn't call it rehearsal, but we
Well,
were unscripted as we went live in the middle of the conversation. It was unscripted.
totally, totally. Yes, yes. Facebook caught us. Blah, 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 blah. I have to get my lips back. Somewhere between Christmas and New Year's, and okay, got to get my start enunciating my words better.
Okay.
Or whatever. Anyways, welcome. Happy New Year. Good to see you again, my friend.
Good to
Um,
see you too. Happy New Year.
we uh, we we had a New York. We always watch New York. We watch the ball drop. It's our way of signaling the new year. And so it was uneventful in the sense that like with what we have to deal with, we kept it very, very small. Stayed up, went to bed after.
Nice. And the ball dropped and we got a new mayor too. New York City has a new mayor.
Yes, yes. Now,
It's a big
now,
deal.
now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I remember we had a conversation a few months back. But was there an encounter? Was there any kind of? Did you have an? Is that the one you had a connection with?
Yeah. I met him in person in
Yeah,
September. Yeah.
yeah. Ve- He
Yeah.
very interesting individual, eh? Very interesting.
Very. I was very impressed by what he had to say, and he's really into self-development. A big fan of Joe Dispenza. That was kind of my exchange with him. It was very
Right.
brief exchange, but it was about Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really love what he had to say, and I'm loving some of the messaging that's coming from him. I mean, he's been the mayor for like 6 days now, 5 days, whatever day is today. So we will see, but I'm really liking his way of just really trying to lower the temperature on things
Mm,
and keep it a little more real and a little more like matter of fact. And what can we do instead of going into because New York City has been hit really, really hard by this new variant. Everyone I know is sick. Everyone I know.
yeah.
So it's even the bus driver for my kid's school today was quarantined.
Wow. Yeah. I
So
mean, it's
yeah,
it's happening everywhere, right? It's happening
it's
everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah, it's literally the whole city is infested with it. Which
What I found interesting about his background, and I don't know a whole lot, other than what the news has been sort of sharing, is he has a police officer background. Like he was the chief of police or something along those lines.
yeah, yeah,
And so knowing that he has kind of like this first responder type of persona or mentality around it, um, it's really about, and I can see this as you were speaking. It's about um, you know checking the sort of the stress level of the situation. Now we're talking at a big situation, I suppose, but but where are we, right? And coming in a level that's calmer, right, where you're more quieter as opposed to being fast and furious in your head, uh, tends to bring in more more insight, more wisdom, better directions, as opposed to just wishy-washy going to whatever seems to be popular. So I'm very interested in how that relates to such a large entity like New York City. It's going to be
yeah.
interesting.
And you know what? He's the second black mayor in the entire history of New York City.
Yeah.
It's a pretty significant change
Oh,
for the city.
milestone.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So
So
good
we'll
on you
see.
guys.
Yeah, we'll see how it's gonna go. Right? Politics can really change a lot of things.
Oh, the politics, right? The politics,
Mm.
right? But no, I it was interesting that the conversation kind of steered, when you first met him, which was kind of happy stance, right? Like it was something that wasn't really planned. It just sort of spontaneously happened.
I really wasn't even considering him because
Yeah,
I think we had this conversation that, like many New Yorkers, I associated ex-police officer to Giuliani, and I think that's a collective, trauma for the
yeah,
city.
yeah,
So a lot of people just kind of made a judgment just based on that background, right?
yeah,
And didn't even look into anything about him. And I was guilty of it, right? I was
yeah,
like, no way I'm voting for this guy. He's going to come and do what Giuliani did. And yeah, and I didn't even look into him. But then I had this opportunity to meet him in person. And I was really, really impressed by his speech, by his demeanor, by the way how approachable he was, and our personal exchange.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, it was very significant.
yeah. And the personal exchange was the common thread, right? It was sort of like, to me, it seemed like there was a paradigm shift in the sense of, oh, you are open to.
Well, I knew that question was prompted by the fact that in his speech he had mentioned life coaches, quantum physics, epigenetics, and I'm like,
Oh,
what? Who is this guy? Now I'm paying attention, right? So when I got an opportunity to take a picture with him, and I asked him if he knew Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he told me he had brunch with him a couple of weeks before. He's like, "Can I
yeah,
come next
yeah, exactly.
time?" Yeah, yeah. And then he just referenced one of Dispenza's books, Breaking
Yeah,
the Habit of Being Yourself, and we just briefly exchanged on that and took the picture, and that was it. But it was a meaningful exchange for me. It just made me feel hopeful for the city.
yeah,
It really did. Because
yeah.
and then I researched him, and he's really into meditation, self-development, like he speaks our language.
Yeah, and that's a cool thing, because when we're talking, and the topic today, and I encourage anybody that pops in and is listening right now, please put just a hello in the chat room so we can actually, the, the funny thing about Facebook and the program that we're using here, StreamYard, is that we have no idea who's really watching, who's really there for us. And so if you happen to be listening right now, just type in hello. Don't have to be in any detail or anything. We just want to just acknowledge that you're here, and welcome. And Dina, thank you for joining us again. And so with we going into the new year, it was I like any other topic that we come up with, they just seem to be important for the moment, in the moment. Like they just seem to come up in the moment, right? And the notion, as we were talking, the notion of hi Rob, good to see you. Um, the curse of personal development.
Let's get into this conversation. It's gonna
Let's
get
get
juicy.
into it. Yeah.
It's gonna get juicy.
Like, is I mean the sidebar question is there a downside to personal development? Because obviously, going back to the mayor story, there was some obvious benefits that were derived from, not only, I'm sure, on a personal level, although we never really talked to him, but just the fact that there was a connection between you and him, um, is a positive benefit in itself, right?
It just said a lot. Like knowing that he was familiar with Dispenza's work said a lot to me about who he is, right?
Yeah,
And his way of thinking and how open-minded he is. I could already tell from the speech that he gave. I was shocked, honestly. I was like, am I in some weird, like, in the
yeah,
quantum right now
yeah,
myself?
yeah,
Like, what is happening here? Because it wasn't the stereotypical politician speech. It was a smaller, type of fundraising gathering. It wasn't like a big thing or televised, but I was very impressed by it, and I immediately felt connected to him, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it does. I mean, I don't know what the point you were trying to make was, but I
I
think,
don't have
yeah,
any
when
points.
no, but knowing that about people, it can
Yeah.
either turn you off if you have any judgment or preconception or conditioning around it, right? If you think it's all woo woo and people, like to do self development, they're just selfish and self involved and blah, 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 or that it's all like smoke, right?
Hmm.
Or you've lived it, you breathe it, and like you apply it in your life, and you know the power that it has, and can immediately connect you to someone, right?
True.
But
It absolutely, and it is a personal thing, right? It's a very personal thing. And from a coaching perspective, I find, like, we have this sort of horizontal line of life, right? Where we
mhm,
have a lot of activities that keep going, right? Or have happened to us. We have that present moment, and then, we have future present moments that are coming down the pipeline. And we really have no idea, what that will be, right? We certainly are aware of our past, right? We are certainly aware of, the things that have happened to us, and how, you know, uh, they have brought us here today. They're, as Stephen Jobs once said, they are touchstones. They're points along the line, right? Um, but personal development, first of all, I don't like the word in the sense of personal development, as if there is something wrong with you in the first place. And I think that's where we get kind of tapped into that. We understand, we're aware of, there's a need for a change, but as you start exploring that path, it rises you above. I call it sort of an elevator effect. So that at the first level, it looks like all circumstances, everything around you is affecting you. Like you play the victim, you're
mm,
part of
mhm,
life, kind of a thing, right? But as the veils start to get lifted, as the onion peel starts to come off a little bit, you drop what we call like baggage and various other things. You feel lighter, and there's a sense of an elevator effect where things, look at the surface level, look like trees, like trunks of trees or grass, whatever. And then as you get higher, you notice, oh, wait a minute, there's a whole canopy of green here. There's like, I never noticed this before. And as you progress along your path of what I call more of a self discovery, but you rise, and then you notice like the treetops, and you notice that there's a whole valley, and you notice there's more possibilities, because when you were down at the ground level, all you saw was a narrow field of focus. So there's a huge amount of benefits, um, to raising your level of consciousness, or raising, in personal development, right? um that's how I see it, right? And so,
yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and sometimes it becomes tricky to describe it without giving that sense that now you're above others, right? So I
well,
think
exactly.
we could put that in the category of like what some of the curses of self-development is that. Well, first of all, let's just start from the start. You get on the journey, you start doing the work. There's a lot that can happen along the way, right? One of the first things that may happen, and that happens for most people, is you can get really triggered and just hit the thick of it, and just really like revert, and sometimes revert back to really even a stronger stance in
Hmm.
in terms of a negative, like become even a bigger victim, right? Let's say if you are a victim, you start doing the work feels really hard, and you can literally, like, that resistance can really come up, and you can sabotage yourself and bring yourself back to a place where sometimes it feels like you actually step backwards, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, we know as coaches that if you stick through that phase, on the other side, there's that step
Yeah.
forward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. And as you progress in this, path and journey of self-development, then you get to a point where you have changed. You have made some changes. You realize that you really like how this is affecting you, making your life easier, right? I'm just simplifying it all. And then now what you're doing is like you're stepping back into your life, right?
Hmm.
And everything around you stay the same, but you're not the same. And now it becomes a challenge to relate to the people and the things in your life in the ways that they always were, because now you're no longer the person that you were before this. No matter how much you have changed, right? You're going to feel challenged because you want to maintain this new identity and this new level of being, and at the same time you can really be triggered and brought back into a different, in that older state of, victimhood by your circumstances, by the people that you're used to interacting with, right? And often I feel like in self-development we don't really have tools or like enough discussions around, well, how do I manage this now? Like I don't want these people that I feel like are not good for me, or I don't want to deal with some of this victimhood or negativity. I want to protect myself and set my boundaries. And at the same time, I feel like people are dropping like flies in my life, right? What is happening? Right? How do I navigate this? And am I destined to just talk to myself and like all those that are on the same path and not be able to have the same conversations with those who are not on the same path, right? And who do I let go of? To what extent is it important or crucial or necessary for me to completely let go of someone, to partially let go of them, to change my behavior towards them, right? So
Hmm.
then now I feel like you do the work on yourself. It's a lot of work. You have changed, and now you have to learn to navigate your own life in a very different way, right? The
Yep.
people in your life in a very different way. And on top of that, there's the way others react to you changing, right? Because we all love the familiar. And when someone changes, then that judgment, that criticism, that wanting to keep him there comes into play as well, right? And it can be easy to get dragged back into that as well if we're not strong enough or stand our ground or have, our boundaries clear and steady, and really keep going down that path. So yeah, it can be tricky. Just because you have done some self-development is not a given that you're going
Well,
to stay on the path, right?
and that's the other thing, right? It's like, people look towards. So there's a couple of things that come up for me. One is, like, we are all change starts with awareness, right? We have this awareness that we feel somewhere along the line, if this was different, I would be different, or my life would be different, right? And so we start to explore different things. We look towards workshops that have interesting titles that kind of relate to what we're looking forward, to, like, if you've got some money problems, you look to the Wealthy Barber, or whatever else other books that might be out there. If things that kind of attract to you, about, that you are aware that there's some changes that need to occur, and you start to get some interesting ideas and insights while you're reading these particular books, and then you start taking some action, and things start to look differently. Like, things start to look differently. What I've got trapped in at one point, was, because I started to see things differently. I wanted everybody to see that. I wanted
Yeah,
everybody to
that's the
have that
other, yeah.
same opportunity, or that same kind of vision that I was having, right? And it was sort of like, wow, so I took a stand. I took a I it became more of an analytical, very egotistic type of, uh, until I realized what the hell was going on. That,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you said, it's like, I'm not better than anybody else. You know, when you realize that everything that you need is already within you, that we are all doing the best we can, given the level of our thinking and understanding. right? um, that to ask somebody, okay, you have to see it my way, put me in that, in those two positions, and that's where the angst started to come in, right? Rather than meeting people at their level and helping them along the path, it was sort of like, no, you've got to see it my way. And it was a trap. I'll be totally honest with you. And there was a lot of relationships that I tarnished.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I completely, I think this is such an important point that you brought up, right? This need to now show everyone this new thing that you have discovered, right? I don't personally see anything wrong in talking about it, and there's obviously a way to do it where it's going to be received, and there's a way to do it where you're just going to be pushed away, right? And I agree with you that we're not better than others, but I also strongly believe that we can all be better in certain things in life, right? You can be a better ball player, I can be a better writer, right? There is such thing as better or worse. That's right. We're not all equal in that sense, right? It doesn't just put me above you as a person, but I do think that some people are more aware than others, right? So in that sense, I have better awareness than you do. So I don't see anything wrong with establishing that for yourself. What is wrong is when you get in your ego and you behave like you're above somebody else, or
well,
make them feel less than you, right?
and
So
that's discernment, right? So it's much like, because I think it's important to point that out, because when you say there's a notion around, okay, better, right? All of a sudden, I know some people are going to say, well, better means you're better than me, or better, right, at this, right? But when you have true discernment, like, discernment for me is is that level of non-egotistic judgment, where you can sort of discern, the difference between sort of like somebody that has been singing for a long time and somebody that hasn't been singing for a long time, kind of a thing. Does that make one better than the other? Not in a in
more
an
skilled for sure.
or yes, yes,
Yeah.
but it's that kind of, and it's a really fine balance between that, right? Discernment, and when I'm talking about the ego judging, which really puts better in a pedestal, as opposed to, yes, you're better, and it can, you know you're on a development curve, as opposed to,
Mhm.
putting, yes, no,
Yeah, and
better.
it really shouldn't be about that. Listen, I strongly believe again that if something has worked for me and it has changed my life, I happily want to go share it. Now, there's a balance in like understanding when that's welcomed and when it's not. And if it's received, great. And if it's not, what my lesson has been, especially recently, it all came to a head for me. Somehow, whenever we pick a topic, I seem to experience that very topic in my life right before within that week. But anyway, what it all came down to for me was, okay, where is this need to want to help people fix themselves, right? At what point is that for them? At what point is for me, right? And where is the choice that I'm not making here, right? Is it like, because at some point, if you're so like not on the same path, and it doesn't feel right for me to have someone around that's extremely negative, or that treats me in a way that I don't like, right? The old pattern was trying to show them a better way, trying to show them that my way was, healthier or whatever, right? As a coach, that's what we like to do, right? Show people a way that's healthier, right? But in my personal life, in my personal relationships, I came to realize, even more than ever this week, that what, my choice is, am I willing to accept what this friendship is giving me as is, or am I just fighting, not letting it go, right? Because at some point, when something doesn't align with you and it feels toxic to you, it feels negative, it doesn't make you feel good, then the choice is clear, right? as someone who has done a lot of work on herself and who has established really clear boundaries around what feels right in my life and what doesn't, the right thing to do for me is to stick to those boundaries, right? Let go of what doesn't serve me, right? And I think that's some of the resistance sometimes is like, oh, now I gotta let go of all these people. I'm gonna be lonely, right? Sometimes you can feel really lonely to be on this path because you're going to have to let go of some people, or you're going to have to continue living in old patterns of being surrounded by people that don't fit who you are, don't align with you, right?
Well,
And yeah.
but even sorry to interrupt you, but I just don't want to get people to the impression that if you go down a self-development role, you're going to have to find new friends, because that's not necessarily the truth either.
It's not necessarily true, but it's very common.
Well, it's
I think
common.
it's common.
It's common, but what precipitates that is that the things that were driving you in those relationships are no longer there. The connection, like not necessarily the connections, but the beliefs of that, right? So a lot of personal development is really looking towards inside and challenging everything that you know that you thought was true
Mm.
as you go forward. Like Byron Katie's work, she calls the work, which is really looking at everything that pops up, and analyzing it, or looking at it as, okay, is this really true or not? And then she goes through her 4 questions and things like that. And it's a really powerful exercise. um, but it really challenges you to, okay, am I really seeing this for what it really is? And that's your perception. So everything is being challenged. Not a lot of people like to be challenged, particularly about themselves, right? Over time and time and time. um,
I'm sorry you feel that way, Adina. I think it's just maybe because Rick and I are not completely on the same page on this. It's not fake. It's actually you're seeing what is.
well, it's
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I appreciate it, Dina, for experiencing that, right? Because it is a total individual experience piece, right? And when you're being challenged, when you feel frictions, um, you start to look at them.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Adina. It just came across very different. Sorry, I'm just reading what she's writing, and I was like, what? I get it now. Yes, I agree. I agree with you. I really agree with you. Yes. So like I want to make another point to what I was saying, because I think what I was really like focusing on was the extreme, right, of all those like patterns and relationships that don't work for you and what you do about them, right? Then the other thing that I discovered in my journey of self-development was that I used to just want every friend to be the perfect friend, to feed me in every way possible. And I would go to them with every problem I had, no matter what their expertise or experience was. And it was very easy for me to be disappointed, right? And the thing that I discovered through self development was like, well, what are my values? What are the values that I'm looking for in friendships? And those to me are like the basically the must have, right, in a relationship. So if the values and the love are there, if we're different or think different about certain things, or you cannot be there for me for, let's say my career, or as a good like mom friend, right? We see things differently. I'm just going to take whatever it is that you align with me with and that you can give me, right? And I'm going to respect that we're like different in all these other ways, right? So sometimes when I say you got to let it go, I don't necessarily mean just let go of people and drop them like flies, but you're going to have to let go of expectations of others, right? You're going to have to let go of
That's
wanting them to fill
yes.
every need that you have, because, just because no one can, first of all, because no one is you. And second of all, someone can be really valuable to you as a friend in one way and really not know anything about your career or understand it or appreciate it, right? They can be there for you if you end up in the hospital, but
Yeah.
not really be able to help you with other things, right? And so it is important to also, like, what self-development did teach me was to really focus on the things that I do appreciate about people. And when I started doing that, there were certain people that I realized they really don't feed me in any way, sense, or form. So now where the work became, what about this person is keeping me in the relationship? Why am I in this relationship? Is it about the person or a pattern that's familiar to me? Right. And this is kind of what happened to me this week.
Yeah.
And it was a pattern. It wasn't really what the friendship was giving me. Right. I mean, I recognize it was giving me some stuff, but there were so many things that were so misaligned with me, and the way I see things and the values that I have, and what I'm willing to let people say or do or make me feel, that I was like, you know what, there's really not enough for me to stick around this one. It's a lot of work. I'm starting to feel like I'm walking on eggshells, and I can't do this, I can't say that, I can't go here, I can't go there. And that is a pattern for me personally in my life, right? So,
Mhm.
it triggered a whole chain of like thinking and just looking at myself and like, why am I still bringing this into my life? And I really do think that it was my test to see, okay, you have this opportunity. And in this case, you can let go of this person because it's not a family member. It's not someone that I have to have a relationship with. What are you going to do about it? Right. And I had this nudge, and I knew that this is something I needed to do. And I was ignoring it until I was given the actual, opportunity and proof that that was the right decision to make, right? And when I say let go of people, I'm not saying I'm never going to talk to this person again, but I'm just going to set different boundaries around my life and myself and our relationship and what I'm willing to share and not share.
Well, yeah, and it sounds so negative when we say let go, because really, what are you really letting go of, right? Like I, and now that I understand the
I
perception.
disagree with that, but continue.
Okay, all right, good.
I disagree with the perception around letting go being negative. I don't see it that way
No, no,
personally.
no.
Like, I don't perceive it that way.
You don't. No,
Yeah, I
I'm
don't. Yeah.
yeah. We have 8 billion perceptions of different,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Like,
Exactly.
we're
Yeah.
all experiencing
Yeah.
life through our own experiences, through all our own life experiences, right? So I know that there's certain words that resonate for me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They kind of hit the scar tissue a little bit, right? And for me, they're just opportunities to keep looking at it, right? To keep looking at it.
Hmm.
But Adina, what Adina highlighted was, this whole thing around, you got to be careful what you read in text, and how you perceptionize it, right? Because it really touches. One thing I found, and it's not really a curse in this sense though, but it really starts to highlight for you the things that where your rubs are. Like, you really start to, and like what Carl Jung said, like, what troubles you about an individual, there's something inside of you, right? So, like, if you're getting triggered by an individual, it's something within you that is actually getting triggered, something with you is getting tickled, right? And that can be, that's sometimes it feels like a lot of work to keep, like, it's like I keep getting hit by this, I keep getting triggered by this. Like, I almost feel like I was better off not in ignorance, just
Hmm.
going on with my life, you know
Yeah.
um and just going with the flow, right?
But there's something to be said about that, right? I completely agree with, if it triggers you, you got it, you got to look at it, right? And at some point, that trigger becomes just, I see it. and it no longer triggers me. And that's what happened for me
Yeah.
this past week. I was like, I am kind of, I was doing a lot. I was a little bit like, it felt different. It felt very different. I was like, wow, it didn't really hurt my feeling because I know exactly how my body feels when someone comes on me and insults me and takes something personal, uses it against me and tries to be insulting, right? Because I've had a lot of that pattern in my life, I know exactly how it feels in my body. My chest gets tight, my stomach gets tight. I didn't have any of that. But what I did experience was I knew exactly what was happening. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, like this is what she's doing. This is what she's doing. This is a no, 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 and no, not acceptable for me. And I was very clear. I said those exact same words to this person. I was like, I don't appreciate any of this. And I respect your point of view. Uh, and at the same time, I don't have to continue
Mm-hmm.
to listen to this or to be even like a part of this conversation when it's going in a way that I don't find acceptable for myself.
Yeah.
So yes, when you get triggered, there's something that you need to look at. And when you have gone, when you have looked at that trigger and you have resolved it, released it, understood it, you have awareness, noticed it, worked on it, right? At some point that just becomes something that you very easily recognize because you know exactly what it is. And you can also very easily just let it go and know exactly what to do about it, right?
Yeah.
So at some
Funny.
point, the self-development does change, right? It's not always a curse. Like I'm constantly just getting triggered, right? I think the less you get triggered, the more you have processed, right? And then there's always going to be something else that's going to trigger you. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I mean, part of what what catches us, and I saw Dina, like you go on different paths, or you feel like, particularly in partnership relationships, you're growing at different levels, right? So I mean, when we say there's a curse, or there's a downside to it, there are things that you need to be aware of, that I think personal development, it really highlights and makes you more aware of what's really important, what's really important.
and of
And
yourself too,
well,
more
yeah.
aware of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And the hardest question that I find that most of my clients have a hard time answering is, what do you really want? What do you really want? And 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 it's not about the bank account, and it's not about this, and it's not about that, but it's, like, for your life moving forward, right? It Those are really opening questions. They can be really revealing, because, particularly, like, okay, I'm 65 years old, looking like 40, right? um
Of course.
okay.
Just like I look 25.
Yeah, okay. Yes. And you know you and, I was just gonna put this on, and you notice people's negativity
Yeah.
more. Yeah, you notice things more, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to act on them, right? For me, it opened up the
True.
opportunity to have more understanding, more compassion. Not to say that I was, because I think more positively and all this other kind of stuff. Actually, going through work, I was often accused of wearing my rose-colored glasses too often. you know,
Interesting.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You're not seeing reality as it is. And I'm going, well, I'm pretty sure I've seen things pretty clearly. But anyways,
Mm.
again, it's just getting, when two egos are fighting for position, that's when wars start. That's when arguments start, right? And yeah, I can be that person. I can take a stand, and and say, it's like, like you're seeing this all wrong, like you need a new perspective. Well, they don't need anything really from me, right? If they're happy where they are, that's fine.
I mean, and sometimes those types of people, which is what happened to me, they just want you to agree with them and they don't want to hear what you have to say,
Yeah.
right? Because in regular, normal relationships, it is about an exchange, right? If I do have a more positive view of the world, I'm just gonna, stand by that. I'm gonna speak my truth. I'm not gonna tell you what you think I should be telling you or what's gonna make you feel comfortable, right? If you're gonna ask me for my opinion, you're gonna get it. Now, if you don't like it, that's a different story. That's not on me, right?
Well,
You have no, um, you're judging my opinion or the way I feel about a certain thing, and it's not for you to judge, right? So yeah, I just wanted to make that point.
yeah. And it kind of, and thanks, Teresa. The the whole idea of, that whole egotistic, the judgment piece, right? Like the more we let go of that, we start to see, you know um we rest back into where our default is, which is in compassion, which is in love, which is understanding. And and the notion of, if I and what Adina pointed to about having a fake conversation, right?
Mm.
Thinking that you have to adjust you've discovered something of yourself. You've discovered something of yourself. And I feel that the more of you show up, because as far as I'm concerned, prior to sort of the development and working on, and understanding, there was a lot more fakeness there, because I was adjusting what I felt I needed to adjust to get along with the world,
To get approval,
to
to
get
yes,
approval,
yeah.
to because my persona is about getting along with people, kind of a thing. I would avoid conflict. I would avoid arguments. All I really wanted was people just to get along. That's all ego development, right? So I would adjust my activities, my language, my
Avoidance too.
well, that's part of it, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
right, so but when you can drop that and actually come from a position of compassion, and allow your inner wisdom to come through as a guide, right? You can flow into a conversation. There's no fakeness there. You show up.
There's no fakeness, and I agree with you. Just be who you are, and like stay present and stay with your truth. And I would say, do not have the expectation that that's how it's going to be received, perceived,
No, no.
or
Well,
right taken. And be
that's
prepared.
yeah,
Yeah, be prepared for the other person to even feel threatened by that, right?
yeah,
And and that's exactly what happened for me, right? And I was fully prepared to own my truth and how I felt about things and accept the fact that this person was not perceiving it in the way I was meant, right?
yeah.
And be okay with that. I was 100% okay with anything that this person. So the difference was, now I was okay with any judgment that would was going to be thrown at me. I was okay with anything that the other person had to say, because of all the self-development that I have done, and because I know myself so well and I know my truth so well. I was able to stand by it. I was able to be my own best cheerleader and defender, right? And be like, I haven't said or done anything wrong, and I actually feel really good about it, right?
Yeah,
And it doesn't come from the ego, it comes from really knowing my truth, right? And
absolutely.
that I had the best intentions, I always do, and I don't really recognize the things that you are accusing me of or that you're saying about me, right? And so even in standing back, right? So we go through this first phase of excitement that we want to change the world and show everyone. Then you learn to stand back and stay in your lane and just, only like give feedback or your opinion when you're being asked. But even within just staying in your lane, being who you are, people may drop out of your life because they just cannot, they do not like feeling the way it makes them feel, to see how another person may feel really their own if they're not feeling
and,
their own, right?
and it's all on them. It's not
It's
on you.
all on them. It's all on
Yeah.
them. So it's almost like an inevitable thing, right? So with all of this being said, there's another point that I think is really crucial about self-development being, sometimes a curse, which it's not self-development in on itself, is
Mm.
this perception that a lot of people have, that you all you need to do is self-development, right? I believe that self-development has its limits, right? There are certainly some things that you can do on your own, and you can go a really, really long way on your own, and there's a point where you can get stuck and go nowhere with self-development, right? Where having that outer perspective, that help, that coach, that, like the peer group that you do the work with, or whatever it is, that friend, just getting an outer perspective outside of yourself and having that interaction becomes super crucial in really giving you a reality check, A, and B, getting you through the stuckness. You can really get stuck with self-development, right? And I
Well,
think
mhm.
often these programs and people that advertise self-development, they make it sound like you can really cure yourself of everything from self-development. And then you see people that have done self-development and they have highly toxic behaviors, or they just take it to like they become so positive, that's toxic positivity or spiritual bypass, right? So that's a conversation for another time, but you can also land into that, right? So there are different curses to self-development, and then
Well, absolutely, um, and we all have different experiences from that, right? And actually, thanks, Adina, because this is exactly where I wanted to go. Is there's I remember, and I'm going to use the analogy. Like I was a pretty good tennis player, and I always looked for higher competition when I was playing tennis. Though
mm,
I would, when I was 14, I was looking to adults. I was playing with adults. I wanted to, because winning, winning all the time, you know, um, it wasn't making me grow. Right? It was like, you had to, play different people, different things. But I was obsessed with it, and I loved the feelings of it. And so I was there at the tennis court every single day, every single day, every single day. And and I found the same thing with personal development, personal growth, whatever you want to call it,
yeah.
right? Because it comes with different labels. Because I love the feeling, I love being around the people. They were always so positive, and it almost became a new religion for me, kind of a deal.
mm,
Um, and and then and then I don't. It's hard to explain, but I just felt I was up against the wall. I wasn't growing anymore. It didn't seem like anything was really. It felt like I was stagnant. I hit a plateau, and it was much like in my tennis. I hit a plateau, and I wasn't growing anymore. And I didn't know what I was doing then, because at 14 I really didn't understand what I was doing. But somebody had told me, he said, "Why don't you just take a week off?"
yeah, we talked about this too, right?
Okay, okay. It's like, but I want to come back. Like I want to. Like, what am I going to do for a week if I'm not playing tennis, right? Um, and I heard the exact same thing from one of my mentors and coaches last year. Was, why don't you take a personal development break, like a
Break, yeah.
personal like a break from like like watching positive YouTubes or doing this or taking, like, go live your life. Just
Hmm.
be in your life. Nothing. Don't try and do anything different. Just live your life. Whatever it is, go guard. But don't go back on YouTube. Don't go into your, When I came back to play tennis, there was no other practicing or no nothing. I could not believe the change. that occurred. And it was the same thing when I took that break from personal development. Something shifted again. Just getting back grounded, just living my life, coming back. Everything looked so much fresher and newer, and I felt stronger. And what I was up against was no longer there.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And as you know, I just went through that.
Yeah.
I was put on this like full total like shutdown break by COVID. And I really fought it because I don't like to take breaks. I strongly believe that watching something on Gaia that's a documentary that is
Yes.
about, like the way the mind works, that's a break for me. And, as I was, as I was ill, I realized I was trying to watch all this stuff and like, I was like constantly rewinding it. It was a lot of work on my brain because I think I had a little bit of brain fog from it. So, anyways, a few days into it, I gave up. Like I had really low mood, and I just like surrendered to it. And
Hmm.
I did something that I never do. I think I told you this last week. I started binging on Netflix.
Yes. Yes.
Like I never just like watch TV like that. And there was something really healing for me about shutting my brain off, and just watching something a little more mindless than all the stuff that I normally feed my brain with, which I love and I believe that it is still something that that benefits me. It's just at some point you need that break, right?
You do.
And I had to let go of the fear of if I don't do this, that I'm gonna lose all the things
Oh,
that
you're
I,
going to go
all
back
the
down.
all the
Yeah.
crap that you tell yourself, right? And I really had to let it be what it needed to be. Was way longer than I am comfortable with ever, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just getting back into working. I'm like, oh yeah, I still have it. I literally 2 days ago, I would stare at the screen and I couldn't like write any content. I couldn't do anything. And I was like, you know what? I think I think something above
Hmm.
me is telling me that there's something else I need to take care of. So I went back to the beginning and I'm like, my body needs, maybe I'll do yoga today. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll take a shower today.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go to the gym. I'm going to start with my body. I'm going to start with like starting to eat, properly again because I wasn't very hungry because of the illness, right? I'm going to start like nourishing those parts first and then I'll get to my brain. And it slowly like worked its way up to this point where I feel like
It's all
myself again.
all
Yeah,
connected, isn't it?
it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
connected.
And that part of that addiction, um, is you become out of balance, right? Because there's
Completely. Yeah.
just so much,
Yeah.
right? And I've started to realize, part of my mantra for 2022
Do this.
is
I'm still
spinning on.
here.
Here we go again. Yeah, the big reveal. Very,
Look,
very nice. Yes, there you
that's
go, folks.
nice.
New York sunset. Yes.
It just feels really like I feel like I have a wall back there. I don't know why it
Well, you do
makes
have a
me,
wall back there, and it's keeping you safe, by the way.
but it's a clear wall.
Yes. But I do find, I started to really, like, I was getting back to my mantra for 2022. My vision is to have a more enjoyable 2022, and part of that enjoyment is really understanding the fine balance between, what really is important and what is not. And I started to look at my email inbox. I started to look at my calendar and the activities that I'm doing. And I'm starting to notice that, geez, there's a lot of heaviness in knowledge and workshops and all that other kind of stuff, but not a whole lot of doing, not a whole lot of
Mm,
focusing on the actual, okay, I'm learning all this, now let's start applying this, right? So you can get into this trap of, I need more information, I need more information, I need more
oh,
information.
yeah,
And it's
100%. So
yeah.
so many coaches specifically are in that trap of the next certificate, the next
Yes.
course, the
Yes.
next this,
When
and
I
it's
get
it's
that,
this
then
bouncing.
I'll be
Yeah,
able to. Yeah.
yeah, and they never take action. That's such a crucial point. I agree
Yeah.
with you, and
Yeah.
and I set boundaries for myself around all of that, right? All of that, and around social media, how many different social media platforms I'm willing to be on, how
Absolutely.
much time am I
Absolutely.
dedicating to it. And
Because it takes
I
you away
think
from
that,
other things.
yeah, and the same boundary should
Yeah.
be for how much self-development, how much more knowledge
How much
am
more
I
do you
going to
need?
allow myself? Yeah, yeah. How much more do I need to learn before I turn it into my own,
Well,
right?
and you
Because I think
forget that
that's,
there's other things. Like there's a life happening in front of you. There's a world of experiences that are going on, right? And if I am in a, I'm not to say that there's nothing wrong with being in a book or whatever, because I enjoy reading. I got my audiobooks, but lately, I have actually put my earphones away on my walk and just enjoyed the walk.
mm, yeah.
Right?
No, I agree.
It just feels like, look at this, the snow is kind of falling gently, if I am absorbed in it's a law of physics, right? No two objects can occupy the same space. So if I'm in my head listening to a podcast, I'm not really paying attention to,
You're not really present. Yeah.
no. So,
But
so
I think music is different in that sense, right? I agree with you. If I go on a really nice hike, I want to hear the nature and I want to hear the wind, the trees. I want to hear all this stuff. I do live in the city. There is a forest in Queens that I go to every week. And while it's beautiful and it's a true, like legit forest and it's huge, you can still hear city noise in the background, like
mm,
very faint. But you
yeah,
can, in some parts of it, you hear it more than others. So my way around to that is to listen to music that really goes along with that hike and that,
right.
it's very
Yeah.
specific type of music. It's very like healing music. And now I can really smell things and just look around and just take it all in and, still enjoy it. I found that that works better for me than hearing some cab driver honk.
Well, and music, I mean, we're bringing, it would be nice, like we could actually do another whole segment on the art of listening,
Oh,
because
yeah. Yeah.
what you're pointing to is, listening at a whole different level. When you're listening to music, you're not listening for every single note. You're not listening
Hmm.
to criticize. You're just absorbed in the sound.
It puts you in flow with what you're
Absolutely.
doing, I feel like. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's yeah. I mean, yeah, we could say a whole bunch,
I mean, I
more.
would say the other thing that came up for me when you were talking, in terms of self development is that can, I just want to like wrap it up. That can be this like constant like binging or taking in and like doing more self development. It can become a way to avoid, right? It can become avoidance. It can
What?
become
What? Avoidance?
avoidance. Yeah, especially when it becomes heavily like geared towards one thing. Like I only binge spirituality, right?
Yeah.
I only binge how the brain works. Like when you don't diversify the things that you're willing to, then you have this narrow focus again. Like your focus
You
is,
need clarity.
yeah, yeah. In order to amplify that, you have to take in even things that don't necessarily feel like they interest you or that, are for you or,
It's
like,
amazing. Like, stay curious. Like, for me, curiosity is the key, right? It's like I am fascinated. Like, I love, especially creative. Like I will, these buskers that are painting and doing different things. I could spend hours looking at the diversity of how people can take certain objects and make certain art out of it. Like, and it's like it just blow. It's the same with when you're looking towards something self-development, get diversified in it. Look towards something that I would never think to go there. I would never have thought to go there, right?
different teachers. And the other mistake is like, oh, I already heard that, or I already,
Oh,
so
that's
and
listen.
so says the same thing. So I would say to people, yes, a lot of self-development is connected and speaks of the same concepts. However, everyone that you're going to learn this from is going to have put it through their own filter and explain it in a way that it may or may not come through for you more or less impactful, right? So that's why there's so many people teaching you the same thing and they're all successful.
Yeah.
A. And B, you may hear something today that you didn't hear yesterday because of where you were at, right?
How many times have you
So
gone into a book that you read several years ago and realized that they added more pages to it while you were
exactly. Like, oh, I didn't really hear this part, right?
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's important to really not only diversify the type of content that you consume, but also who you consume it from, because we are like creatures of habit, and we tend to get conditioned, right, and automate our thinking and our ways. And the more you diversify it and the more you question everything and the more you're opening yourself up for broader views.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, diversification, adaptability, flexibility, those are all really key words, right? So anyways, we're at the top of our hour. Well done.
I'm just proud that I was able to get you over the 1 hour.
I didn't know we were in a game. Are we in a
No,
game?
no, we're not in a game, but we're letting it end on its own, right?
True, true. That's right. Yes, yes. Well, yes.
It's an inside joke, everyone.
Hey, thank you everybody for showing up. Teresa, Dina, Rob, and a few others. Appreciate it. Please, share it with friends. Let us know. We like to build our audience and diversify our thoughts, and give us some comments. Or give us some questions. We love to answer them. And
Suggest topics. I mean, not that we have many topics that we can talk about,
always,
but
always, yes,
yeah.
always, yeah. So um, thanks, Rob. And
Thank you,
yeah, so
guys.
we'll announce probably around Sunday again, like we normally do, and what will happen on the following Wednesday. And everybody go in peace and keep learning.
I'm
Keep.
getting a 10 over here.
Ah, okay, Jayla. Oh, did I say?
It's lights.
All right.
Anyway,
Catch you guys
bye,
later.
everyone.
Bye bye.